Today, I will outline some of the ways in which the classical music industry can restructure itself to become more environmentally sustainable. Some of the attitude shifts that will be required to make this transition, and ultimately, how this change can lead to a more prosperous and creatively inspired industry. In a way, it's not surprising that there's very little discussion within the classical music industry regarding climate change and the role that we may have to play in it. We are a small industry, and there's probably a pervading sense that a change in our actions will do very little to mitigate the global climate crisis. However, one thing that the COVID-19 pandemic has proven about our society is that a sense of responsibility for everyday individual behaviors and actions can make a big collective difference. All of us ensuring that we wear masks in public, keep 2 meters apart, and avoiding social gatherings has resulted in our health system staying afloat through a situation in which it very possibly could have been overwhelmed. I think that the same thinking needs to be applied to industries when it comes to fighting climate change. Every industry, no matter how small, has to adapt and make fundamental changes to its ways of business in order to contribute to the collective project of saving our planet. Within the classical music business, concert presenting organizations have a crucial role to play, as they are the ones booking artists, paying them for their work, and playing host to audiences. While there are many good practices that contribute to reducing waste and carbon emissions in small ways, such as banning single-use plastics at venues, using LED lighting, and getting rid of paper tickets and programs, the single largest contributor to global carbon emissions in the concert business is transportation. In particular, the use of air transit. Just to give you an idea, a return flight from New York to London, England creates 986 kilograms of carbon dioxide per passenger. That's the equivalent of heating a house in a cold climate or driving a car for a whole year. So if a concert hall adopts all of those in-house policies relating to energy use and waste reduction, but still flies many of its performers in from across an ocean, or even on a short haul flight, it is still contributing significantly and harmfully to carbon pollution. Of course, if this was an easy problem to fix, we wouldn't be talking about it right now. There are many economically and artistically legitimate reasons for why concert venues hire artists that need to travel great distances to perform there. Certain artists, names like Lang Lang, Yo-Yo Ma, are surefire box office hits, and their concerts will sell out. While many venues are still likely to lose money on those concerts due to the astronomical fees and expenses incurred by hiring musicians of that standing, they undeniably raise the profile of the organization and add a sense of prestige to the series. More widely, being part of the worldwide touring circuit and bringing artists who make their livings by playing all over the world gives any venue or series a feeling of cosmopolitanism, bringing the best in the world to your doorstep. Having an internationally focused concert venue has become one of the hallmarks of a culturally relevant city. However strong these reasons are, we need to return to the central question here. Is it worth contributing substantially to the demise of our planet in order to hear world-famous artists play in the flesh? I would argue, probably not. That's not to say, however, that people would be in any way prevented from hearing world-famous artists play live. Since the COVID-19 crisis began and public events have been disrupted or postponed until further notice, live streaming technologies have come to the fore as a viable way to produce and consume performance art, not unlike what we're doing tonight. Of course, this medium is not perfect yet and presents many challenges of its own. But at its very best, it arguably has the potential to provide an even more immersive live concert experience than attending a concert in person, especially if you're on any kind of budget. Sure, you can pay hundreds of dollars, months in advance, to book a ticket right in the center of the first row to see, let's say, Yo-Yo Ma play Dvorak's cello concerto. You will see the beads of sweat falling from his forehead. You will hear him breathe with the music, and you'll notice the subtle gestural interactions that he has with the conductor of the orchestra in order to make sure that the music stays together. These things are the gritty essence of live performance that recordings can't provide, and are the reasons that we value live performances so highly. But If you are somebody who's not willing to spend hundreds of dollars and plan months in advance, you will likely be seated near the back of the hall, where you will be squinting just to catch a glimpse of Yo-Yo Ma's cello, probably having to lean to your left to see around the rather tall person sitting in front of you. Apart from being able to say, "I was there," afterwards, you haven't really had a comparable experience to the person sitting in the front row. Live streaming has the potential to completely remove that boundary and give every viewer the same up-close, gritty experience without the financial discrimination and requiring very little advanced planning. Other technologies are on the way that will enhance distance consumption even more, such as Steinway's Spiriocast, which essentially allows computerized acoustic pianos to live stream through each other. With this technology, let's say Lang Lang could be playing a piano recital on a Spirio piano in Carnegie Hall, which is then live broadcasting to every other Spirio piano in the world. Each of these satellite pianos is acoustically reproducing his performance in real time. I think the industry and consumers need to embrace the many technological possibilities presented, support their development, and help the whole world become more connected and more cosmopolitan, while also eliminating our unnecessary carbon footprints. But make no mistake, by saying that we should embrace these technologies that offer high-end distanced viewing experiences, I'm not at all advocating for the demise of live performances with in-person audiences. I've played a number of live stream concerts during this pandemic and even a set of outdoor in-person concerts in the summertime. The overwhelming feedback that I've had from my audiences is that they miss attending regular live performances, and they can't wait to get back to doing so again when it is safe. Hopefully, one positive takeaway from this pandemic is that we never again take for granted the joys of congregating for shared artistic experiences. However, there's no reason that congregating for a live concert or event needs to generate a substantial and harmful carbon footprint. If concert presenting organizations take this to heart and reconsider their artist booking practices, they can greatly reduce their environmental impact by presenting artists who live locally. Perhaps the most egregious aspect of artists traveling the world to perform in important concert halls is that there are typically many musicians in these destination cities who can play the same repertoire to a comparable standard. Sure, there's an aspect of celebrity that might be lost, but in terms of the artistic product, hearing an excellent performance of, say, Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto, that product can almost always be sourced locally. If consumers are not happy with the local product, they can then turn to live streamed concerts and watch their favorite artist play from the concert hall in his or her home city. This competitive aspect is also important, as it provides an incentive for organizations to ensure that their in-person products are of the highest possible quality. I acknowledge that this requires a major shift in attitude from both concert presenting organizations and from consumers. However, it's important to return to the fundamental question here. Is it worth contributing to the demise of our planet's ecosystem in order to see famous musicians play in the flesh? Again, I would argue no. Aside from the environmental aspect of this shift towards presenting locally based artists, there are also economic and artistic benefits. A good comparable here is the food industry. When you go to a shop and buy, let's say, a bushel of locally grown apples, you're not only making a good environmental choice, because the apples have only been transported from the orchard to the store, rather than by air from their country of origin to a central warehouse and then finally to the store. You're also putting money back into your local economy and helping local producers develop a better product. Some of the money from your purchase will go back to the farmer, who will then be able to invest in his or her farming infrastructure and be able to grow a bigger or higher quality crop in the future, thus improving the product that is available to you. There's been a marked shift in the past few decades towards supporting local food growers in Canada, and the result is a thriving local food economy that provides sustainable, high-quality products to consumers and creates job opportunities for farmers. If we were to adopt a similar approach in the music industry, a musician supported by their many local concert venues would then be able to reinvest their earnings into their local economy, be supported and encouraged to develop better artistic products, and would be able to contribute to other aspects of musical life in the region, like teaching, outreach programs, and helping startup venues get off the ground. From a purely financial perspective, this would also mean that concert presenters could spend less money on travel and accommodation for artists and more on actual take-home fees. From the artistic perspective, I think there's a great amount of value to be found in performers building a relationship with a specific audience over time, rather than constantly performing for new audiences or performing for an audience with such infrequency, say once every 2 or 3 years, that there's very little sense of continuity. I like to compare this to dating. On a first date, it's very easy to appear as a curated version of yourself. The person doesn't know anything about you, and all they have to go on is their first impression. Over a series of dates, or through the course of a relationship, it becomes much more difficult to curate your image. You really have to be the person that you are projecting, and it will become obvious to your partner if you are hiding something. A musician's relationship with an audience is much the same. Performing for the same audience frequently builds a bond between the two parties that makes the musician artistically accountable to his or her listeners. When the sheen of novelty is removed, every concert has to be well thought out and engaging, or the audience will start to lose interest. Many classical musicians are able to travel the world, playing essentially the same sets of pieces for different audiences for years on end. This approach simply would not hold water with a local audience. People might want to come and hear the same program twice, but interest would certainly fade by the third, fourth, and fifth times. Having to constantly develop artistically and build new ideas keeps a musician fresh, and it keeps their audience interested. One of the most frequent discussions in the classical music industry is the issue of relevance. How is playing music written by dead white European men relevant to today's world? If the industry continues to ask the critical questions I mentioned at the beginning with regards to gender and pluralism, if it becomes a leader in environmental sustainability, if it embraces new technologies and challenges itself to build a more accountable artistic product, we will be well on our way to answering that question. This change needs to start with organizations. And I would like to finish this talk by challenging all concert presenters to turn the dark days of this pandemic into an opportunity to rethink and remodel the work that we do, so that when we come out the other side of this crisis, we are more prepared to play our role in the future of our planet than we were before. Thank you for listening today.